This is the Curta Calculator Type I. The Curta! Made in Liechtenstein in 1952. The Curta calculator is the greatest mechanical calculator ever created. That's what they say, at least. And what more can I say about the Curta? When I was a boy, I dreamed of being a man. When I was a man, I dreamed of being a man with a Curta. I've been aware of the Curta for a long time, since before I started collecting old adding machines, and to be honest, I never really thought I'd get a Curta. Believe it or not, I don't really go for high-end stuff. Almost all the things you'll see in my videos cost me less than $40. Probably the most expensive thing was around $100. But a decent working Curta will run you about $1,000, and I don't really go for that sort of thing. But about a year ago, this Curta came to me as a gift. A shocking gift, really, and I still don't quite know how to react other than to say thank you. This is the first chapter of a 12-part series all about the Curta. Now, you don't have to look too hard to find videos about the Curta on YouTube. This guy did one, this guy did some, even this guy did one. So what could I possibly have to add? Well, the simple fact is, I have a Curta, and I make videos about old calculating machines. So what am I going to do? Make 0 videos about the Curta? No, I'm going to make 12 videos about the Curta. The basic operation of the Curta calculator is addition. You input the number by sliding these sliders here. So here's like 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can add it by turning the crank once around. The answer appears in these little windows around the top. Now if I want to add another number, I slide that one in too, turn the crank, and it adds. You can actually see the addition happening 1 digit at a time, more or less right to left, just like you would do on paper. This is different from a typical desktop machine, which somehow does everything all at once. This digit by digit adding is a consequence of how the internals work, but we'll leave that for later. You can see pretty well that the answer digits are on tiny spinning wheels. There's tons of little like clickety-clacks. It's like watching one of those old train station signs. The input sliders also stay where they are after you add each number. That's to help you out when you're doing multiplication. But we'll leave that for later. Most desktop machines would clear out the input every time unless you switch it into the repeat mode. But the Curta is like permanently in the repeat mode. By the way, these little nubs up here can slide around, but they're not connected to the mechanism. You use them to mark where your decimal point is, or even as a visual separator if you want to work with 2 numbers at once. Anyway, that's how you do addition. There's another readout over here in the silver where it just counts how many times you turn the crank. That's to help with multiplication. But people say the Curta looks kind of like a grenade, and one reason is this thing here, the clearing ring. You spin this guy around and it zeroes out each digit as you go. You can go all the way around to clear the answers and the counter, or you can just do one or the other. One difference from a typical desktop machine is in the way you do subtraction. On like a Monroe machine or a typical pinwheel machine, you subtract by just turning the crank backwards. It's simple and intuitive, although you have to remember which direction is which. But the Curta crank only turns in one direction. It just doesn't turn backwards. So to subtract, you need to put it in subtraction mode, which you do like this. Now it's subtraction. You crank it and it subtracts the number and the counter counts down by 1. So if I want to just do a simple subtraction like this here, I input the first number in addition mode, then doink over to subtraction mode and crank in the second number. It works. If you look carefully while it subtracts, you can see some kind of funny business here. Check it out. I'm going to add 2 and then immediately subtract 2. And look at this. That digit doesn't just turn back to 0. It actually turns forward past 9 and around to 0. And every other digit spins all the way around. It turns out the Curta internally doesn't do direct subtraction, but it always subtracts by adding. But we'll leave that for later. And what happens if you subtract past 0, you ask? Here, let's do 0 minus 1. All 9s, man. I guess that's like an error or something. So it doesn't really do negative numbers. But hey, check this out. I want to do this bunch of stuff here. Now, if I do it on a calculator that does handle negatives, it looks like this. I do 2403 minus 8732, which ends up being negative, which this calculator can do. And then I'm going to add 7142, and it all works out. On the Curta, I add the first number, 2403, then subtract 8732, which rolls it back, and I get this crazy thing. But I'm just going to keep going. Add 7142, and it still ends up with the right answer. It's a Curtsmas miracle. So I guess the Curta kind of can do negative numbers. They just look weird. Like -7 looks like this on the Curta. Okay. I didn't mention this thing yet. It's the only ordinary looking switch on the whole thing. But we'll leave that for later. I gotta fill 11 episodes here.